Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating man. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, everyone. José Hildo de Oliveira Filho. I was born in Manaus, the state of Amazonas in Brazil. As I was telling Gertrude before we started, Manaus is a sort of isolated city in the middle of the jungle. You can get there by boat from Belém, which is the other Amazonian capital, and it's a 4-day trip through the Amazon River, and it's a fascinating trip because you sort of disconnect from the world as we know it, from cities, from your everyday life, and you're just navigating through the jungle. And it's before, when I was growing up, we didn't have internet on boats, so you would spend 4 days completely offline and just enjoying the view. They give you some food for the trip, and you usually get a hammock to sleep, and you'll be on your way. So from Belém to Manaus, it's a 4-day trip. And from Manaus to, for instance, Rio Branco, another Amazonian capital, it's another 4-day trip. And if you are into, for instance, taking a boat from Manaus to, Machu Picchu, it would take you 5-6 days, more or less, if you do the whole thing by boat and then by bus. Being born in Manaus was funny. I have to say. I mean, it was my mother's hometown. She had migrated there. She had migrated to another Amazonian capital in which she met my father, and they both moved back to her hometown. So I was already born there, and I think that for my mother, the nature around our apartment in the city was already too spoiled, but for me it was still, my private jungle. We had these. We were just playing around, building houses on top of the trees, and going to a lot of military areas because they were the most where the most jungle was inside the city. Yeah, I remember going around a lot and trying to find any nature possible That was pretty much my growing up. I lived my first 18 years in Manaus, and then I went to university, and I did my first 2 years too in Manaus, and I moved to Portugal for an exchange period. I lived in Portugal for 10 months. I was supposed to stay there one semester, but then they extended my scholarship, and it was very interesting. It was the first time that I was away from home, and I was in another continent. I was an Erasmus Mundus student. I had my own scholarship. I was more or less independent and free. I traveled a lot in Europe, but I remember that feeling at the time that this would definitely be my first and last European trip. I would not come back to Europe because it would be too expensive for me. I wouldn't have the means, and it would be just too hard. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month as a tourist, but not necessarily like so long. 10 months was quite long for me at the time. And I remember coming back to Brazil and thinking, well, what should I do next? And then I applied for a Swedish Institute scholarship, a master's program, um, a master's scholarship. I was at the time looking for scholarships, and I applied to other Brazilian programs, but without much success. So when I started applying to Sweden, I received two scholarship offers. One was in Uppsala up north, and the other one was in Lund, down south Sweden. Lund's offer was better, but I remember feeling quite conflicted by it. I remember that there was something about Swedish Arctic landscape, the people, the possibility of seeing a completely different landscape that really fascinated me. But I ended up going to Lund. I did a master's studies in social studies of gender there in Lund. And then I moved to Prague after I finished. It was 2016. I started working a regular job, and I felt there was something telling me I could do something else in academia. So I applied to a PhD program at Charles University in Prague. And it was a very funny story because I met my supervisor by chance. I mean, I looked for him online, and he was the only person in the department that didn't have a Czech sounding name. So I thought he was a migrant and he could help me with solving some research problems concerning migration. So I did that. We met, and I found out he was already born in the Czech Republic. But he did have an interest in migration. So we sat down, and as he was a specialist in sociology of sports, I ended up having or writing a project on Brazilian football players in Central and Eastern Europe. I deliberately look for lower division football players. I wanted to understand how it is that you migrate from Brazil to Central and Eastern European countries. How is their overall, life story? How they see themselves, and I found out, much to my surprise, that it is a very difficult and tough career. Um, Many of them were feeling very lonely, playing or living in small towns in the Czech Republic, in Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, and uh, some of them face injuries. So a lot of them talked about the pain of playing football, enduring pain, and the result is a book. Actually, I wrote a book called this one, Sport Migrants, Precarity and Identity. It's published by Routledge, and it's coming out. You can pre-order until May 17th, and in 2 days they will start sending the book to the readers. um, it was also a bit painful to write about other people's pain. I felt very conflicted about it. I I have some mixed feelings about, you try to preserve their identity, you try to be respectful, um, and I deconstructed a lot of my stereotypes about, football players, about the football industry, and I think it was a very fruitful project. This project led me to a postdoc at the University of São Paulo. I'm still living in Prague. I will start online, uh, and next year I'm moving back to São Paulo. And the remaining part of this year, 2024, I'll move to Cologne, to Germany. I found a supervisor there, and I think I will teach something about sports migration there. Um, I never really thought about sports as, like, in the beginning of my career. I mean, I liked football as most Brazilians do. I had I remember being young and being sucked, absorbed by the game, celebrating Brazil's victories in World Cups and so on, seeing the great Brazilian squads. But I remember, I don't know, by the time I was, I don't know, 18, 19, I had really given up on football, I guess. So, um, yeah, it was sort of coming back to my younger self to understand what fascinated me before and why I had lost it somehow, and especially, I think, taking the distance and, thinking about why football wasn't that fascinating anymore helped me to connect with the players. They do have a different view of the industry. I mean, they do it for work, and it's not they're not fans. They're not they don't fetishize the game. They do it every day. They train every day. So I guess that is pretty much it. Now, my plans, actually, that's the funny thing about it. I mean, if I think about it, I was born in Manaus. I lived in Portugal. I lived in Sweden. In my Swedish master's degree, I moved to the Netherlands. Then I moved to the Czech Republic. In my PhD, I moved to Hungary. Then I also tried to study a bit in Poland, but then the COVID pandemic came and I had to move back to the Czech Republic, and now I'm moving to Germany. I've spent a lot of time in Europe already, so I might go back to Brazil for 2 years and then try the United States. I still don't know if that will be possible, but yeah, this might be part of my plan for the future to get there.
Wow, what an incredible journey you've had. Now, I thought I had seen the whole world. It sounds to me you have been to so many places. It's
No, I
impressive.
mean, no, it's not. I mean, Europe is sort of a small continent, so it's okay. I've never been to Australia. I would love to. I would love to go to Australia, you know.
This is another interesting part of the world.
Yeah.
So, can you describe how your diverse educational experiences across these different countries has influenced your perspective on diversity and inclusion in academia?
Oh, yeah, I think coming from Brazil, it's interesting to notice that. I mean, the Brazilians, they don't have the most competitive system in academia. A lot of people just collaborate with each other. The graduate programs are much more collaborative. There are scholarships. So as soon as you finish your undergrad, your master's degree is covered. So you get a scholarship. Everyone gets the same amount of money, and and depending on the people, you can build very cooperative environments, and it's good for learning. It's good for the teaching staff. It's good for the people participating. You don't get that much money because it's
Right.
Brazilian public funds that they are scarce, but
Yes.
you get a lot of exchange and collaboration and care. People do care a lot about how things are going on in each other's lives and so on. Sometimes it crosses a bit of some lines, but still. But I remember going to Sweden and thinking that, oh, this is a gender program. This is diversity and inclusion, par excellence. And then when I was there, I realized that Swedish academia was structured in such a way that it was very excluding in the end. I mean, you could do your masters, you could get a Swedish Institute scholarship,
Hmm.
or you could get funding from the Swedish government if you were a Swedish citizen to study your masters. But your PhD was nearly impossible. There were very few places, and it's super competitive environment in the end. And so you get the feeling that the way the programs are structured, and how people think about academic life it
Mhm.
changes quite a lot.
That's interesting. So, how does your work at CEDRAP address or incorporate elements of diversity?
Mhm.
And what challenges have you encountered in this area?
Oh, I think I you I okay. Well, I can talk about my book, the ethnography, and a bit, and then like we can because the question I tried to answer was why Brazilians are so successful at exporting football players.
Right.
I mean, FIFA released its report a few weeks ago, I guess, and the Brazilians account for 40% of all international transfers
Wow.
in players. We dominate the market, and we are not the most populous country. I mean, it's not like I had to try. I mean, I departed from an anthropological idea that everyone has the same body, more or less, that we are all humans and there's nothing inherently different about Brazilians naturally that will make them play better football or
Yes.
than anybody else on earth. So I had to come up with the idea that Brazilians developed a different system of training. They developed a specific sport called futsal, which is a small
Mhm.
football. It's a indoor football, and
Right.
they train the youth in these two sports, football and futsal. And you can build a career in one or the other sport.
Okay.
So in the end, I think the way the football industry is organized in Brazil is different, for instance, from African countries or from other countries that only invest in football. And the football economy, the football business itself is so much structured into this very much pyr- pyramid scheme in which you find the top five leagues in Europe that
Yeah.
you don't see how other people in other leagues and the Czech Republic actually live and so on. So you have a focus on the 1%, the top 1% players, and the other 99% just
You don't see them.
yeah.
So, what role do you believe social sciences can play in promoting a deeper understanding of diversity within societies?
Well, I think that is a very interesting tension in the social sciences itself. Um, themselves because if you look at history of social sciences, we often gravitate from more universalistic views of humans to
Mm-hmm.
more um, uh, particularistic view of how people um relate uh, to each other, to their histories, and so on. So I would say that any student in social sciences would face this dilemma of trying to understand humans both as a general, a collective, and also a sort of and especially in the West, there is this idea that humans are more or less separated from nature. That you have all these brain size and all this some sort of legitimation for separating yourself from nature. And
Yeah.
and on the other hand, you have this more particularistic view of humans. So I would say that especially social anthropology gives you an idea that you have to be there, you have to talk to people, you have to
Yes.
understand them in their context, and I think that's one of the best ways to comprehend people, to get to know them, and write respectful and insightful accounts of, of people
Right.
about people.
Now, can you share some insights from your upcoming monograph that relate to diversity and inclusion? The perception that I have and that I've seen with regards to foreign implants coming to Europe to play soccer has been very, very negative. I actually have a nephew who got picked to come and play for a team in Spain, and his experience was horrendous. As a young black athlete playing in Europe, the racism there is pretty profound. What did you find from your research while you were writing this book?
I did find a lot of racism, a lot of like exotification, a lot exoticization of Brazilians. I found a lot of ready-made ideas people
Mm-hmm.
have about Brazilians, how like Brazilians play naturally, learn how to play football naturally on the streets, and they ignore any sort of systematic way of training Brazilian players in Brazil. So Brazilian sports pedagogy is completely lost in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've found even the white Brazilian players are racialized based on notions of racial purity. In the end, they could be
Wow.
white in Brazil, but they were not white enough in Europe. That was
Oh,
sure.
wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah, yeah. I
Interesting.
also found, I think, especially in lower divisions, that the medical care sometimes was very much lacking, or it wasn't as good as I thought for professional football players.
Right.
And some of them had to return to Brazil to get the care they needed for
Oh,
surgeries and so on. So for me,
okay.
it was very surprising. Sorry.
Yeah, that is surprising.
Mm.
So, how has your membership in various sociological and anthropological associations influence your research focus on diversity?
I think I did. I was influenced by different anthropological and sociological traditions
Mm-hmm.
to build a study and to build different dialogues with different academics from different disciplines, and they certainly have more presence in one or another scientific association. It's also good for conferences, and for instance, I joined the British Sociological Association, I think the other
Yes.
day, and they have a lot of online events. That's very very good for,
Okay.
you don't have to be in Britain to,
To
participate.
attend.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, that's fantastic. So you are a constant learner. So
yeah.
discuss a specific project or research finding that significantly impacted your views on diversity.
One of the things that I found out is that there are a lot of ready-made ideas about football players, so
Mm,
that they would go into a career in football because they would like to be the provider for their families, and so on. And of course there is that. But when you play lower divisions, sometimes this you can't achieve this ideal of masculinity,
yes.
and you have to sort of relate to your limitations, the dreams that your family had for you
Yeah.
in the beginning of your career, and how you can actually, balance it all out, so you could be happy playing, they could be happy for you, and the money involved is much less than you thought it would.
Should be.
Yeah, in the end. And so in the end, I found that the lives of lower division players are more complex and more interesting, and they show a different form of transnational migration. They show a different form of engaging with, of thinking about money, thinking about success, thinking about what is important, actually, what should be valued in their lives.
So, what strategies do you recommend to institutions looking to enhance their diversity and inclusion policies?
Wow. Well, I would. I thought about this during my research, in the sense that, as I told you, Brazilians and Uruguayans especially created this different form of football, and
Yeah.
then so you have football soccer, and you have a smaller court football. So in this way, you can bring in more people, you can train them uh, in a diversity of sports,
Mm-hmm.
and you can direct them to what fits them best.
Right.
And sometimes, of course, these players that play uh, at smaller courts, futsal, they probably won't get that much money, visibility, media attention, and sponsorship deals, but they will be able to, some of them at least, will be able to actually claim some success.
Right.
So I would say that uh, my recommendation would be to bring in more diverse people, as many people as possible, and try to find different paths around. So for people can actually have enough time to understand what's best for them at the
Yeah.
organization, and try to uh, build
Find a way.
find a way. Yeah, that's true.
Yes. So, looking forward, what areas of diversity research do you think are critical for the social sciences to focus on in the next decade?
Oh yeah, I was thinking about this. I'm reading Judith Butler's new book, Who is Afraid of Gender, And I was thinking about this. We have a lot of challenges ahead. Like there is not only, for instance, Europe will have to change its migration policy. Will have to um, be more receptive of migrants, be more appreciative of migrant contributions to society. We will have to find a way to fight populism and right-wing views and all these forms of trying to find quick fixes for migration policies, like the UK outsourcing asylum policy to Rwanda, or the Australian asylum policy to. I think that the challenge for migration scholarship and migration scholars is to try to change the narrative, to not so for people to focus more on inequality, to focus more on welfare provision, and instead of just scapegoating migrants and
That's so good. Last question. As a seasoned traveler, that young boy who left the Amazon jungle and ventured into the big world, they say that when you travel, you are never the same person you were before you left. What would you say to somebody out there who is thinking of seeing the world? What has been the biggest benefit to you for traveling and seeing the world the way you have?
yeah, well, in this regard, I think I was very fortunate. I'm not rich, but I could get scholarships to travel.
Yeah.
And I think that what travel brings you is this idea of openness to new people, to new stories, to new ideas. And
Yeah.
it brings you a sort of anthropological disposition to connect with people, to try to understand them, and be mindful of your own limits, and try to test them in a way, to try to push yourself to value diversity in the end.
Yes,
So, yeah.
that is beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story with us today. It's been an
Thank
absolute
you.
pleasure, getting into your head, digging into your story. I really feel honored and privileged that I found you through LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is bringing you voices and stories of people from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, inspire you, energize you, empower you, but most of all, to celebrate our diversity as human beings. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open,